स्वागत है आप सबका मेरे चैनल सुनो कहानी पे वेयर वी वर रीडिंग अ शिमला अफेयर बाय सृष्टि चौधरी। और आज हम पढ़ेंगे एक्ट 2, मतलब कि पार्ट 2 पढ़ेंगे हम। पार्ट 1 ख़त्म हो चुका है, अब पार्ट 2 में देखते हैं कि क्या होने वाला है। और सृष्टि चौधरी की 2 और बुक है जो मेरे चैनल पे ऑलरेडी अपलोडेड है, ललन स्वीट्स एंड वंस अपॉन अ कर्फ्यू, तो आप लोग जाके वो भी सुन सकते हैं। एंड उसके अलावा भी और भी बहुत सारी बुक्स हैं जो आपको बहुत अच्छी लगेंगी, तो प्लीज़ गो एंड एक बार चांस देके ज़रूर देखिए, आपको बुक्स बहुत अच्छी लगेंगी। बहुत ही रिकमेंडेड बुक्स है जो कि मैं रीड करके यहाँ पे वीडियो अपलोड करती हूँ, तो प्लीज़ आप लोग जाए, सब्सक्राइब करें, लाइक करें वीडियो को। और अगर आपकी कोई फेवरेट बुक है जो आप नहीं पढ़ पा रहे हैं किसी न किसी वजह से, तो आप वो भी कमेंट कर सकते हैं। मेरी पूरी कोशिश रहेगी कि नेक्स्ट वीडियो उसी पर हो। तो चलो शुरू करते हैं। आई वेंट फॉर अ वॉक। अच्छा, शुरू करने से पहले माफ़ी मांगना चाहूँगी, मुझे चैप्टर 7 मैंने पढ़ दिया है ऑलरेडी, वीडियो में अपलोडेड है। सॉरी, मैंने बोल दिया कि पार्ट 2 पढ़ रहे, पार्ट 2 स्टार्ट हो चुका है। और ज़रा कन्फ्यूज़न हो गई थी क्योंकि मैं ऑलवेज़ बुक्स रीड करती रहती तो उसमें कन्फ्यूज़न हो गई थी, तो सो सॉरी। तो हमें चैप्टर 8 से पढ़ना है, पार्ट 2 शुरू हो चुका है। It was known across town that while building the railways, British engineers could not figure out a way to traverse the hills surrounding Shimla. The hundreds of precious curves, viaducts, and tunnels along the railway were all made thanks to the expertise of Baba Bhalku, Shimla's very own saint, rather than a modern engineering feat. Legend has it that all they had to do was bring Baba Bhalku to the proposed railway sites. With his deep knowledge about the inner working of the train, all he had to do was point where a tunnel or bridge should be constructed. Ratan Babu and Mr. Sood approached Baba Bhalku's apprentices to find out of the weakest link in the rail route where it would be easiest to break and dispute the train journey to help the man escape. The apprentices' recommendation of Tunnel 43 made sense. It was small, unnamed, and dark. Its exit led the way down to the village, where the man could easily walk to. All we needed was a small, easy gunpowder bomb to induce a minor landslide that would force the train to stop at the exact location, granting freedom to the marked man who unknowingly signed up to a die on foreign source. Involved as we were in the Kalka Simla rail sabotage, Afreen and I were finally invited to meet Guruji. We stood with Ratan Babu outside a decrepit thatched thatched house under pouring rain, trying to shield ourselves under a metal shed that appeared to be on the verge of collapse, water dripping down its sides with alarming force. The wet cold was getting through my coat, right to my very bones. Afreen stood quiet and resolute, exchanging an occasional smile with Ratan Babu, who placed up and down in whatever little place was available to us. I knew the road to liberation was never easy, but it was starting to get really uncomfortable here. Just at the moment, a man wearing a shawl around his shoulder and a woolen cap that covered most of his face appeared before us. He gestured to follow him further into congested lanes. It was hard to guess where the streets ended and the dwellings stacked on top of each other began, and I realized it was the same area to which I had followed a friend all those weeks ago. The man walked quietly, craning his neck to all in one direction, checking for witnesses. The bottom of my sari was drenched, but I had long given up on staying dry. We went through a door, entering a dark corridor. I was conscious of my loud, beating heart, my wet hands turning sweaty, and the feeling of Afreen and Ratan Babu close to me. The room we finally stood, it was cold, lit with candles and lamp at the back. Our guide took off his cap and left the room. Eventually, another man emerged. It was immediately clear that this was Guruji. He had an aura of revolutionary importance. He stood tall and broad-shouldered, had a beard that looked scruffy and neat at the same time, and wore a woolen shawl wrapped around a khadi kurta and a turban resting on his head. Ratan Babu bent and touched his feet. Guruji patted him on the back, his eyes sharp and piercing, then immediately rested on Afreen and I, even as they embraced Ratan Babu. Vande Matram, Guruji. Ratan Babu greeted him. The man nodded his head, still staring at us. I realized we had not covered our heads, and I pulled the edge of my sari closer to me. As we both folded our hands and bent our heads, I found myself hypnotized by the man's presence, magnetic and yet so reserved. It was hard to imagine what he might be thinking right now as he stood in front of us, so enthralling and visceral. So, these are the Malkins of the hotel up on a sunset hill, Guruji said. I glanced at his face, unsure whether it would be too disrespectful to look directly up at him. I was an admirer of your father. Our methods differed, but our goals was the same, he said. The mention of my father made me warm up. You knew him, Guruji? Ah, he laughed. Much more than that. It's a story for another time. But your hotel now was sucks up to this English sahibs day in and day out. We, Stephen and Afrin said, slowly but surely, it was necessary. Guruji, we are here at your service. We want to fight for our independence. He grunted. That's good. They say it true. And they say it well. He who fight for the freedom of his land will be immersed by the God. I nodded meekly. The good women are here, willing to fight. They too must have duties, he said to Ratan Babu. But these duties are not easy. Children have it easy these days. Back when I was a young man in Calcutta, a bunch of us men lived together in a garden house of Dr. Dutt. Not so we could have a good time together, but we could live under strict discipline. We were up at 4, meditating, fasting, training, obeying our Guru from dawn until dusk. We trained not just our bodies but also our minds, involved in only one purpose. We thought about our goal and nothing else. Tell me, child, are you there not three of you mystery girls? Our eldest sister, she does not know. She wants us to be safe. He nodded. And so, why do you disobey your sister? Why don't you stay home and look after yourself? Afrin spoke up with so much conviction. It made me feel guilty. Our father told us to always do our duty. This is our duty to finish our father's work and help our people be free for foreign rule. He turned his back to us. Freedom is not so easily won. It needs many sacrifices and has to be snatched from the army of training. All of us have left our old lives behind. We were not born into this. I was born in a small village in the Madras Presidency, Malipuram, and you would not have seen a place like it. There were lush green fields and winding rivers, and no matter how far I ran, the call of my mother always reached me. My father was a schoolmaster and well respected in the village, but those who worked on the land were poor, giving away most of what they earned every year in the tax to the British. In the particularly harsh year, the yield shrunk, but the taxes remained the same. I saw my father, frail but sure, confront the tax collectors, passionately bleeding for the people of our village. That one lone figure in front of this officer who held guns and sticks, eventually pushing him aside and ruthlessly extracting their taxes. Still, I saw his eyes full of rage. Many years later, when I stepped off the train at Hora Station, Calcutta, with big dreams of going to college and changing the world, a new world unfolded in front of my eyes with all its possibilities. But I never forgot how my father stood strong that day. I met intellectuals and activities in the plus of the movement, but that that act of one man in a small village standing up to an empire, that was the real meaning of a revelation to me. You have to be willing to earn that freedom, and so it should be driving force of your life. It's not a job you do once and forgot about it. It's a lifelong battle, a dharma. Are you willing to give it your everything? Yes, Guruji. Give us a chance, Afrin answered without hesitation. He paced around the room for some time. When the men are rescued from the train, they will head down to the nearest village, Palka. From Simla, there are 3 routes through which Palka can be reached, and all 3 of them require a certain knowledge of a terrain. I am certain that once the news of the train stoppage arrives at the police station, the first of the sepoys will be sent out immediately. They will arrive sooner or later, but knowing which route they take is important. Our men, including you, Ratan, will take the train. A woman cannot fight out there, but she can be our ears and eyes. You must find an excuse to be at the police station for a few hours. See how they deal with the news, learn the route they will take, and let us know immediately. We will direct our energies accordingly. Our father used to say, if we can see it, we can be it. In my mind's eyes, I was a revolutionary, a common peasant woman risking it all for the greater good, a woman who was kind and strong and brave. I saw myself as a woman greater than what her circumstances made her out to be. Palka is a Muslim village. Ratan Babu said, if we get to the Muslim on our side, Guruji, the villagers could help some of the men who take off from the train. If the man could be safely hidden in the village, there would be a much higher chance. We cannot ask for help from the Muslims at that moment, son. But why not? The Imam seeks cooperation. I am sure he would be willing to talk to. Guruji put up his hand. The situation is too volatile right now. If we attempt to take Muslim in the fold, you don't know which way it will fire. But all of us, Hindu, Muslim, Parsi, whoever, we all need to unite, and only then we will be able. Ratan Babu, believe in the cause and believe in your Guru. You know, my hair did not turn grey simply by sitting it out in the sun, right? Have faith in our experience and wisdom. Do you believe in us? Ratan Babu bent his hand. Absolutely, Guruji. Guruji patted him on the back, bringing a smile all over. I wished Noor was with us to see all that was going on, to give her view on what we had set out to do. It was bad enough that we were hiding it all from her while she worked hard to try and save our home, writing letters to several lawyers, none of whom were interested in taking up arms against the British. We were out here, bringing more trouble on ourselves. On the way out, we met Sood, who gave me another one of his enigmatic looks. So, Miss Mistry, we have found merit in going forth with Simla Circle. These are things one never regrets, for it is the stuff of life and death. I smiled. What makes you go forth? Just that I would like to be the master of my own destiny. And to be that, you cannot let things happen to you. You have to make things happen. At the time, the significance of what he said was lost on me, but it would not be long before fate drew me closer to the truth, and I would come to see with searing clarity just how much my understanding of reality had been colored by my own ignorance. When the day of the Kalka Simla rail sabotage arrived, I crossed Christ Church and the shops around the mall, thinking back on time I had spent here with Charles. How joyous and hopeful I had felt with him. I was struck by the why he seemed to exist in a world of his own, and yet how this world of his wanted to immerse me in the most loving ways. I walked through the houses, their facades a chaotic jumble of colors and styles. Ramshackle stalls and the storefronts spilled out onto the narrow lanes, their wares on display for all to see. The air was thick with the scent of spices, incense, and the food of the clamor of haggling merchants and chattering customers playing in the background. I felt exposed and vulnerable, as if at any moment I would be arrested and hanged on the spot for treason. Yet I was filled with an undeniable thrill, a sense of adventure and excitement that come from venturing outside the safe confines of my sheltered world. Suddenly, the secret of mysteries they lay hidden within the chaotic lay within streets of the lower bazaar held all the promise of the world. I entered the really utilitarian police station. Its faded brick wall said standing straggly against the surrounding hills. Inside, the atmosphere was equally grim, with bare concrete floors, dim lighting, and a pervasive air of bureaucracy and authority. It was quieter today, and the only sound was of the clenching of metal doors and the occasional muttered curse or groan of the pain from within. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and silence. I approached Singhji's desk. He was surprised to see me and offered me a sweet meat from the box sitting on his desk and asked if I would like to some chai. I nodded gladly, reciting detailed instructions for its preparations. It looked like they had not been informed of the escape. I could imagine Ratan Babu along with Sood and other faceless men of the Simla circle, all dressed in blazers and khaki dhotis, sporting turbans and hats, carrying in their hands Gandhi guns and Lee Enfielded rifles, hiding out in the hills, waiting for whistling train to approach. I wondered how it would all play out once the tunnel was blocked and the men opened the train doors to help the men escape. How would the train guard react? Would there be gunfire? Would Ratan Babu's life be in danger? I willed myself to not think such thought. The better the job I did here, the more chances the Simla Circle man had to success. How have you been, Singhji? I started lazily. Singhji raised an eyebrow, confused by my interest. Yes, madam. I am good. How are you? Well, since you ask, I hurtled towards a long-winded description of the hotel and its travels and the struggle of finding film screens. He listened politely for a while, but I could see him getting more and more impatient. The trains would be close to the tunnel by now, and I hoped everything would go by plan. What if they failed to accurately identify the correct train? Or what if the explosive did not denote on time and trigger the landslide in the tunnel? Madam, can I help you with something? Singh asked. I signed. Actually, yes. I was here for some weeks ago to talk about this Indian woman who used to work for us. Not anymore, of course. Begum Jan, you know, the queen of spices. He nodded. I cleared my throat before speaking more, hoping to appear hesitant. I am sure you heard all about that nasty protest business at the hotel. But we swear, Singhi, we had nothing to do with it. I know Begum Jan has not since been seen since the incident, and I know you all are looking for her, and I just wanted to share some insights. I was not sure whether to come to you, Singhi. As you might remember, I had earlier begged you to save her. I had seen folded by her playing the part of the poor lonely woman. But in fact, sir, I looked around the office as if afraid someone might overhear us. She is not half as helpless. I am sure you may have heard from your man, sir, that she is very clever and well connected woman, always eager to brew trouble. Word on the street is that she is trying to rally the Muslims. By now, for sure, Ratan Babu and the other must have approached the train. How quickly would be the train guard have realized that something was amiss, and how fast would they have responded? They would be surrounded by chaos and confusion. The train compartments would have been broken free by now. Let me tell you how she came across. I proceeded to narrate our history with Begum Jan, how we had gotten to know her, the time she had spent at the hotel, our many ups and downs. But soon I was out of the conversation, worried that the message about the attack on the train had not come yet. I could see the battle on Singhji's face, the urge to dismiss me versus having to acknowledge and respect the information I brought to him. Singhi, there is also something else. The area around the hotel has started to feel quiet and safe. The other day I saw movement behind the trees. It was not animals, no, but something sinister. You know what would happen if someone was spying on the guest? We would be arrested, Singhi. I highly doubt. No, it's true. The other side of the forest. You know, at the hotel's back, it is very dense. I have often seen people from neighboring village building their tents there until the guards drive them away. Can I tell you what happened to the hotel guest that one time? He said, go on. I asked for another chai, saying I had a headache, trying to come with more stories to fit the occasion. I could not hold out for much longer, sure at the some point Singhji would ask me to leave. There is an urgent message for you, Sahib, the peon at the door finally said. Singhji got up, excusing himself. I breathed a sigh of relief. While he was away, I also stood up and edged closer to the office door, trying to hear what they were talking about. Their voices were panicked. In the chaos, they completely forgot about me, and I saw Singhji give about stresses orders, talking about trouble near Palka, dispatching run across town. I tried to find out what they were talking about to see which route the Sipais would take, but it was impossible to understand. What do you want now, Nalini madam? Singh's voice surprised me, and I jumped as he spoke. No, nothing. I was someone spying Palka. Someone saying spying Palka. Singhi, is it possible that if your spies are going there, I could go along? I have some work in a nearby village, but I am afraid to go on my own. The route is very disastrous. But if I were accompanied by sepoys, I am afraid that won't be possible. The men are going through the stream, not the forest, and you would not be able to keep up. Oh, if that will be all, I am afraid there is a lot. I dashed out of the police station and found a runner in the city to send my message to a friend. The custards are on the stove, about 20 to 30, I would say, but there might be more. Be careful, the extra topping this time is not the pistachio, it's rose water. Take care. People say they love Simla in the summer, when the grass is lush and green and the sun shines beautifully over its colorful townscape. But I love Simla when it rains, in its cold and wind, because it makes the hotel more of a safe haven. Its wooden floors then creak louder, reminding you that others are just close by. The firewood crackles merely, rending the storm mist of nights warm and cozy. The smell of Afrin delicious food wraps constantly through the kitchens and the dining room, and while every time the door opens, a burst of wind disrupts our well-preserved homeliness. At some point, the door shuts again, renewing the air with the scent of pine, making us feel at home. Ever since we had been asked to leave our house in Bombay 5 years ago, the hotel had been our only home. When we had first arrived, Noor, holding Afrin and my hands, had taken us for a walk through the forest. She pointed at the mountains in the distance and asked us what we thought of their vastness. When I looked at them, something moved within the depth of my heart, and I knew this would be home. The peaks promised mystery and at the same time trust. They shouted that they would take care of us. The quietness, as opposed to Bombay's incense noisiness, brought peace to my mind, and I knew that in some twisted way of the world we had come home. And now that it was about to be taken away from us, we felt wholly lost. From our refugee, we saw soldiers advancing toward Palka, led by the commander in chief Lord Ripon's car. They marched down the Hindustan Tibet Road. While I thought of Ratan Babu praying they remained safe, Afreen only thought positively. She believed that everything would work out of the best. The police arrived and checked the hotel thoroughly, claiming to be looking for suspicious characters. In the evening, a curfew was declared, making any contact with Simla Circle impossible for the moment. While nobody had an idea what was going on, people in the lower bazaar were randomly arrested and put it in jail. There was a sense of foreboding around town, and we had to work extra hard to entertain entertain our housebound guests, organizing rummy nights, themed dinner, and impromptu dances. Within a couple of days, some of the hotel servants or members of their family were taken away by the police, and we bushed ourselves in trying to seek their reliefs. Soon things fell into a lull, and Afrin and I waited to hear of Ratan Babu and the others. Then, several days later, Ratan Babu returned from his trip home. As we had told Noor to her, he narrated the mad rush of Bombay, the smell of the sea breeze, people in the grip of Satyagraha. When he managed to get an audience with Afrin and me privately, the stress of the past hovering days was made visible. Everything went wrong, he whispered, his voice cracking with tension. We managed to trigger the bomb on time, and the train stopped. The guards from the train jumped out, so we were able to open the carriage door. We told the man the truth and to run. The guards had still not seen us, so we asked them to quickly follow us to Palka, but then Sood saw that some of the men were trying to break open another carriage. Why would they do that? I asked fearfully. Because it had guns. Can you believe our luck? The train we blocked in its track had a carriage full of Moser pistols. They were being taken to a godown in Kalka, where soldiers were received them. Since so many of the men were crowded around to open the carriage, the guards finally noticed and started shooting, but the force had just begun. What do you mean? Afrin asked. Soon abandoned his post. He seemed to think that ran shaking the train off its arm were essential. We would never get our hands on ammunition with such ease otherwise, but our job had been to lead the men to Palka, not stock up on the arms. Azad Bhai and I led the men away, but we could not hold the guards off that well. Now the Sood and Dr. Banerjee were busy carrying away the ammunition. Everybody scattered, and maybe some of them were even caught again. But we messed up. We could not lead them away and instead had to flee and hide. As the police got there so fast, we thought we were leading these men to freedom, but instead they got caught trying to escape. And we don't know what happened to them then. Sood should not have left us on our own like that. But why would Mr. Sood do that? Ratan threw up his hands, apparently tired of asking himself the same question. He made a decision for what he thought was greater profit. He says that we can now use those arms to conduct operations more easily. So he and Dr. Banerjee took the arms all the way to Simla. He shook his head. No, they hide themselves and the guns in some caves. So then Dr. Banerjee returned yesterday, but the guns are still there. We will have to find a way to sneak them into town later. How do you think Guruji will react? Afrin asked fearfully. Ratan Babu shook his head. We thought the next few days would quieten the terror that seemed to be have taken over Simla, but it got worse. The authorities, having found out that a Hindu group had led the attack on the train, were troubling the Hindu villages neighboring Palka. Random fines and indiscriminate taxes were imposed on the villagers, their crops often destroyed and burned in the hopes that they would reveal the group who had attacked on the train. But the greatest blow came when a suspect was executed, shot in the street before an audience and made into an example. And then, to add salt to the wound, they allotted a piece of land in the village to the Muslims to stoke tensions for the British. It was the oldest trick in the book, pit the Hindus against the Muslims. So far, the Simla circle managed to remain discreet in the entire affair, but I wondered how long that would last. The days took us faster into the summer, and there was still no solution to save the hotel. And yet, I held on fast to the hope that Noor would find something, a loophole, a forgotten rule, and an error in their judgment. While I dreamed that I wanted to ship myself to America, the only place that came to my mind when I thought of home was the hotel and Simla. I could not bear to think of it being taken away from us. It felt like the end of our world, but Noor promised still resolute, still determined. We will find a way. We only lose when we give up. Sometimes I would look at a friend, catch her laughing about something or trying on a sari, and I would wonder how she could keep up this joy when beneath the simmery surface the fear of the last few days still rebutted in our hearts. Did she always have it in her to be brave and disputive, heroic and unfazed? It filled me with awe that she sort of walked in our father's footsteps. Now that Noor had accepted that Afrin had married a Hindu, she insisted that we at least have ceremony at the hotel and Ratan Babu's relatives could be invited. And if the wedding could not be part C1, the feast would certainly make up for it. Sweets were already being prepared. Motichur laddu, Mohanlal, Gujia, Ghevar, Balusai, Kaju Katli. The piece of the resistance would be a Afrin's special farsi custard which she would prepare with her own hands to be served to all guests on the day of the wedding. Afrin was going to be adored with our mother's wedding dowry, a 3-tiered gold necklace studded with emeralds, matching bangles, and piles for her feet. Aside from the jewelry, Afrin's wedding comforts included several of her father prized possessions, his antique furniture, and his car that stood at our uncle's home in Bombay. The hotel would be free of guests for 2 days, as Ratan Babu's relatives would be traveling to Simla from Bombay, bringing along the family priest. But as the day of the wedding arrived, a sudden storm seized Simla. For 2 days, the sky took its time to darken and warn us of the looming bad weather, thunder and lightning announcing an outburst that threatened to split open the hill on top of which the hotel perched. From my window, I watched the vicious clay spare nothing in its way. Hail demolished every spilling in and around our garden, furiously hitting the windows and uprooting trees in the forest around the hill. Streams of the muddy water ran down the hillside. Everything had to be moved inside, and the garden could not be used for any of the wedding ceremonies at all. Even if the rain were stopped, it would be too full of puddles. All trains and flight into Simla were cancelled. Food supplies that still had to arrive were held up, and we only hoped they would make it to us before the arrival of Ratan Babu's family, who were also delayed. Even fireplace in the hotel was constantly light, and it was impossible to open a window or a door to the outside without a barrage of water and wind coming in uninvited. Now that we had the hotel to ourselves, it seemed more eerier than usual. The building echoed of the emptiness surrounding us. Finally, the rain began to lighten. Through the howling gale and the thunder remained. We received word from town that the trains had started again and prepared to soon receive the guest. Afrin was being given a haldi chandan bath by one of the helper girls, and Noor and I were almost ready. I wore my mother's blue sari and did my hair up in a bun. As I watched Noor tend to her hair, I realized that she was still completely in the dark about Ratan Babu and Afrin, about Simla Circle. Should I tell her how they met, how they wanted to fight for our country, that they would not perhaps have a normal family and life as Noor expected it? She had to know. I wish she would know that it was all for her fathers, for our country. If only she would understand. I hesitated at first, but then braced myself for whatever consequences telling her the truth would have. It could not be worse than Noor finding out later that I had known all along and never told her. I must tell you something. There was a moment of stillness, and I will never forget the way she looked at me, as if I had punctured her short-lived moment of happiness, of ignorance. She knew before I said a single word that we had been hiding something. She had heard our whispered debates, observed our fidgety demon. How could we hide ourselves from someone who knew us better than ourselves? I knew there was something going on. What is it? The door to the room burst open, and immediately we knew something was wrong. It was Afreen, only half ready, her hair falling about widely, her sari undone. What happened? Noor immediately got up. The family, the Ratan Babu, caught in a storm, Afreen began, and I detected a sob stuck in her throat, her voice shaking. The riots have interrupted in the city between the Hindus and Muslims. We don't know what happened exactly, but there have been many fights in the last few days, and how some say a girl has been taken away, abducted, and a Hindu girl by some Muslim man. Her family have no idea of her whereabouts. Emotions are running very high in the city. Ratan Babu left for town to get his family, would not stay longer for a second longer. It was as if our world had suddenly come crashing down. I looked at Afrin as fear gripped my heart and curled around my toes. Fear of the outside world over which I had no control, a world which had the power to destroy our loved ones. What menacing omen shone upon us, that the happiest day in the life of my dearest sister must be tainted with the life of her family in danger. I shuddered at the thought that our actions might have brought it about. The train robbery in Palka, which created tension between the Hindu and the Muslims. Perhaps this was what happens when you are reckless with the lives of others and your own becomes dispensable as well. What can we do? I asked, my one hand already around a fringe and the other handle of the doors ready to set up. Neither of you are allowed to step out, Noor said, and just as the two of us attempted to protest at the same time, she held up our hand firmly. I mean it. There will be mobs out there on the street. They won't care to ask you if you are Hindu, Muslim, or Parsi. Outside is no place for a woman right now. I must try and contact the magistrate. She swiftly left the room, leaving the two of us in the silence that threatened to swallow our hearts whole. Half dressed in our celebratory attire, half paralyzed in ignorance and helplessness, we went to the salon and waited there, reluctantly sipping cups of tea, looking up at the slightest sound, waiting for any news. The scene was right out of the tragedy. Afrin, in her bridal white sari, stuck here with her sisters, unable to do anything, while the man went outside in a storm that refused to subside, mobs taking over the streets of our beautiful town. I will change, Afrin announced, getting up, and I nodded sympathetically. But as she left, I saw something else on Afrin's face. She did not look distrustful or shocked. She seemed determined. A tremor passed through me. What if she attempted to do something stupid? I headed to our room, and my suspicions were confirmed. Her wedding sari lay spread across the floor, crushing under my breath. I ran, just managing to catch her slipping out the door. Afrin, I yelled, and I already out in the garden. She stopped to look back. Go back. I returned soon. She yelled, are you mad? There is a storm out there. A riot in the city. Just go back, Nalini. Afrin, I'll be back before you know it. I just can't bear to think of them out there on their own. Don't worry about me. How can I not? But she was already gone, sprinting out the garden, heading to down the hill. I stared at her retreating figure, feet frozen to the ground, feeling torn. What hope did she, a lone woman, have in a city crawling with the gazed mobs? Noor turned up behind me and asked suspiciously, what are you doing here? Afrin gone after Ratan Babu. She must have caught the displeasure in my voice, for she immediately stepped out and I followed her without thinking. My heart melted in a relief, like always by taking charge. Noor had settled my heart. She had always been the anchor we could trust, and no matter how far we pushed her, she never distrusted us. The thought brought me guilt and the pride at the same time, and I willed myself to be more like her. We called out Afrin's name a few times, but in the blackness of the night, we had lost sight of her. We too began towards the town, afraid, but the thought of Afrin alone out there terrified us even more, and we took after her with the resolve. It was not raining anymore, but it was extremely wet, the puddles and the sweeps everywhere, and the water is still dripping from the trees. The rain had brought all kinds of insects, and I could already feel the first sting on my ankles. Dressed as I was in my sari and impractical shoes, we heard a rustle in the distance and decided to cross the forest before calling out for Afrin, not wanting to attract any attention. Dark thoughts preoccupied me as we went forth. Noor clutched Afrin under her breath. I had read about the riots in the other cities, the conflict between the Hindu and Muslim. I thought of my sister out there, determined but helpless. Picture from our childhood crossed my mind. Afrin taking my hand and walking strangely to her friends, telling them I just had to be included in their circle. Afrin and I playing together in the house, pretending we were warriors queen. My resolve hardened, and I thrust all other thoughts out of my head and quickened my pace. We peered at the mall after coming down the hill. There was not a soul around, and the view scared me. I had never seen the streets so eerily deserted, so quiet. I could hear my heartbeat. The shutters were down, all the shops, and the street, which was usually dotted with rickshaws and throng of people, was conspicuously empty. We walked quietly along the edge of the street toward the lower bazaar, where we assumed Afrin would have gone to look for Ratan. If his family had already arrived in Simla, their entry would have been through the lower bazaar. Standing quiet as mice by the stairs descending into the lower bazaar, we gripped each other's hands. The streets were dazzling, labyrinth closing in around us, and I was glad for Noor's presence beside me. She, not quite shaking as much as I, extended a protective arm in front of me. I heard them much before I saw them. Footsteps hitting the ground in the unison chants, hailing a god. It was the sound of fear cooked. Cloud in trapezoidal, the sound of death cloaked in mania. Noor grabbed my hand, and we immediately crouched in an alley, the stench of sweat almost making us stretch. A cloud shifted, and moonlight showered the street. They all wore turbans and had flashes of orange scarves around their heads or waists, holding sorts of sticks in one hand, burning torches in the other. Some of the men banged in their sticks against the closed door and windows, as if reminding the neighborhood of their arrival. Some threw their torches at the carts and stand thought to be owned by Muslim, watching them catch fire. The heat from the fire reached us as we pressed ourselves against the wall, trying to remain inconspicuous. The group split up, half of them heading up towards another lane, and the other half turning into the alley where we crushed. Panicked, we started backing away. It felt as if I finally saw the world for what it is now, that someone had thrust me in the middle of death and darkness. In the talkies, there is always fear and thrill, but there is a certain kind of magic. In fact, fear and thrill under the threat of our very lives. There led no magic, just pure cold fate and the knock of bad luck. What we saw next made our heart jump out. Afrin, illuminated by the fire at the end of the street, the crowd's eyes resting hungrily upon her. Chapter 10. Noor sickened in a voice as loud as she could muster. Stop! Stop right there! Afrin, come here! Our mother had given Noor her name, which in my opinion was the most beautiful of all the names in the world. Noor, the light of that guides the world. She had known even then that, as the eldest child, Noor would be the light that led us forth. How truly Noor lived up to her destiny, especially after our father was no more, but even before, she taught me to be clever yet gentle, curious but never boastful. She taught me to listen to my elders with calm, to follow my sister with patience, to pray and to behold and to understand with love. She also taught me to have faith in myself and that a willful, strong mind is the greatest weapon in the darkest of the time. When the other schoolgirls cast me out, she refused to go out up to them and order them to include me. She taught me to go up to them on my own, to introduce myself and smile kindly, requesting sweetly to let me be in their company as she watched from afar. Where Afrin would go and fight for me, Noor would encourage me to fight for myself. Where Afrin was ready to destroy the source of anything that caused me problem, Noor would Noor would hold my hand and help me navigate those problems. Where Afrin was furious, Noor was calm. And in the face of this storm, Noor was once again there with her light. In a quick move, she pulled me by the arm as I stumbled forward, rushing us towards Afrin. Noor pushed both of us behind herself, and we huddled together, clutching each other's arms and standing wrapped in attention. There could have been about 50 men in front of us at some point. Their faces blurred into one another, and they became a nameless, shapeless mass who had come to destroy me and my family. It seemed as if my entire life as a woman had led up to this moment when my life, my integrity, my very soul would be threatened by a bunch of men beyond control. I looked into the eyes of these men who were about to change my life. Simply by their very presence, their eyes seemed heated yet empty, driven by the only one purpose to maim, finish, destroy. I doubted any of them were evil people. I am sure I would have crossed at least some of them on the street in the past, and they would have respectfully lowered their eyes. I am sure this man had families, wives, children, sisters, parents, people in their life whom they would die or kill for just as I would. They surrounded us and slowly closed in, now just several feet away, holding up their burning torches. It was as if I could see the end of my life through their light. Through their light, it cast sinister shadow even in the darkness, and I wondered what they would do to us, burn us alive or cut us up. It could not be as easy as that. My childhood flashed through my mind, and I realized it was the happiest time of my life. With my sister, our father telling us stories, I had a fleeting thought of Charles, his blonde hair, his sparkling smile. The man at the head of the mob stepped forward. He had dark black eyes, a moustache, and a sword that he proudly wielded. He might have seemed bigger than each of us, but together all three of us formed a chain that I could see broad hesitation in his eyes. The ground behind him made impatient noise. In that moment, I doubted that we would get out of there alive, and the second I accepted my fear, it disappeared. He pointed the sword at us, bringing its tip to Noor's neck. I heard her catch her breath. Please, she started. We just go lost. We have nothing to do with this fight. Afrin and I nodded, joining our hands together. Get them. They have also taken our women. We must get them back at them. Someone shouted from the crowd, and Noor shook her head wildly. We mimicked her. No, we are not. We are not Muslim. Check it, check it. Noor thrust out her arm to show them the missing tattoo of the name. We did the same. You are not Hindu, the man snarled. No, no Hindu woman would be stupid enough to come out right now. We announced it everywhere. We are Parsi. We are Parsi. Look, we promise we are Parsi. At first, I thought she was holding out to the end of her sari to them, and I didn't understand. Did she want to show them that Parsi tied their sari in a different way? I doubted this man would identify the subtitles, but then I realized it was not the end of her sari she had held, but our kushti, see scarred girdle we tied around our waist. I could see the man staring spectacly at it, causing more panic on Noor's face. She suddenly seemed to have an idea and thrust the pendant towards them, the one we all wore around our necks, on which was carved a stunning image of the flower, the force of life and the light that propelled us forward, that watched over us, the pendants that our father had given to all of us when our mother died, the pendant we never took off. I prayed that Parsi inscription on our person, our father's script, and mother's blessing would work. I too held up mine to show them, and the man peered at it. I turned to Afrin, but she stood frozen next to her. I took mine off. She suddenly blankly before the Hindu wedding. I froze in a horror as suspicion looked over the man's face again. I stepped in front of the Afrin, holding upon opened my arms. They would have to kill me to get her. She is our sister, Noor pleaded. Please believe us. She is our sister. Her name is Afreen. We are mysteries from up on the hotel. She is married to a Hindu, Rajput. Ask him, ask your people. They would know him. He is a Rajput. She is his wife. She is a Hindu too. Will you discredit one of your own? Someone muttered something in the crowd, but I didn't quite catch it. Rajput? Somebody asked again. And we exclaimed affirmations, repeating Parsi like an instant chant. Finally, the man at the head of the crowd nodded. The others at the back shifted uneasily, unhappy at his decision. Outside is no place for women right now, he said. Immediately, we covered our heads with the edge of our sari, tightly gripping each other's hand while rushing off the street, further and further into the alleys in case some of men came to look for us on their own way. We kept moving until we were in the space between two houses, hidden effective, gasping and crying, thanking the Lord that He had spared us, that He had let us alive. Noor grabbed both of our hands, kissing them, telling Afreen how foolish she had been. I never wanted to get both of you in danger, Afreen replied tearfully. We heard more noise and felt quiet instantly. There was another group of men out on the street, this time a Muslim mob, also chanting, also smashing out to destroy the Hindu neighborhoods. But we were well hidden, staying quiet until they had walked on. As the man lit more things on fire, the Hindus destroyed Muslim street and the Muslim destroyed Hindu street. Afreen turned to us, tear in her eyes. Do you see what's happening here? I can't fight Ratan. If they see him, they will kill him. She shook her head helplessly, her face agonized. There really was no way for us to do anything right now. It pained me to see Afreen. Where were the police now? They always seemed to be there to drive away the Indians from the mall. So why were not they here now, controlling the mobs? Rooted to the spot. I looked up, turning to the Lord, hoping to be guided, to be told what to do. But any step we took, it seemed we would lose something. We waited there in the darkness for minutes, hours. It was hard to say until all noise has subsided. The mobs had likely decided to march toward the neighboring village. Nodding at each other, we stepped out gingerly out the lookout for the slightest sight of noise. Afreen held our hands and whispered to us to follow her, and we did it, trusting her. In the darkness, we moved forward like cats, looking closely but not making any noise. I was sure now that the street above us had the house where we were taken to meet Guruji. Perhaps this was the safest place for us right now, where we could look to Shimla Circle for help to escort us, and they perhaps even knew where Ratan Babu was. Before any of us could say anything, Afreen yelled out, Ratan! The silence was broken and I felt fear grip me. What if there still be men out? Ratan! Afreen called out again, and in a few seconds we heard latches being unlocked, doors slashing open. Afreen Bahanji, is that you? It was a familiar voice, and Afreen yelled out in a relief. A man came down and realized it was Ajad Bhai. Noor looked at us, confused, being the only one who didn't know these people. I explained her later. I quickly muttered, that's what I was trying to tell you before. We followed Ajad Bhai up the winding street, momentarily relieved to have a shelter over our heads. Inside there were several men we didn't know, some armed with swords, a couple of with guns, who could not have been more shocked to see us come in. Ajad Bhai led us into another room, asking us to sit on the charpais kept there, handing out blankets. He lit more torches and warmed the presence of so many others, and the locks on the inside of the house finally relieved the tension I had harbored since stepping out of the hotel. We had been out for only a few hours, but it felt like weeks. Afreen started. Streets full of men, Hindus on one side and Muslims on other, out of blood, destroying shops, setting fire to tongues, lynching random people they find. I saw several dead, nobody to respectfully say goodbye to the bodies, not a soul on the street in the lower bazaar. But why did you come outside? Ajad Bhai asked us. Afreen looked at us before answering. To look for Ratan Babu. We haven't had any word for him since he left. Do you know where he went, Ajad Bhai? Perhaps we could go look for him in a group. He looked at me and Noor first, and the way his eyes expressed grief, we immediately knew something was wrong. Afreen got up and walked towards him, Noor coming forward to hold her. Didn't you hear, Bahanji? I thought you must have heard. His family was caught in riots and his father injured and his Mataji no more. They say I was born at the most inauspicious moment in Indians' history with Britain, a moment that changed the very course of the country, that instilled anger, hostility, and bitterness in the hearts of millions across this land, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. As bullets rained down that fateful day and ended hundreds of lives in Amritsar, our mother took her last breath while giving birth to me in Bombay. When I awakened, so did our father's conscience as he realized that supporting the British rule was wrong. Shockwaves run across India, and Noor says She remembers those days clearly. As a motherless child, I wailed all day, wailing for a family that could never be, wailing over our father's broken dream, his punctured faith. Our relatives failed about to take care of us as my father remained in shock over the next few days, unable to accept what had happened. When our father had married our mother, he was deeply in love with Hindustan. He admired its people, who had always welcomed other people and cultures, such as our own ancestors who arrived here centuries ago. But he was also in love with the what Britain stood for: progress, science and knowledge, growth, leadership, and wealth. He thought a marriage of the two, the richness of Hindustan's people and the triumphs of Britain's industry feats, was more than desirable. He had believed British rule to be good for us, that Hindustan had plunged into darker ages while the rest of us, the world, progressed, and through Britain's worldliness, we would grow again. Significantly, he felt that Parsi, with their worldliness, thriftiness, and strong sense of culture, would lead the way of such modernism, for we were and always had been the bridge between the East and the West, having the best of both worlds in our minds and heart. He hosted British officers and their wives, perching friendship and camera- camaraderie, setting up dialogues and conference where there was a deadlock, suggesting innovative solution to make progress. But after the day of my birth, the same day as the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, our father saw the British Raj for what it was and spent months trying to understand what he could do. Finally deciding to act not just for now, but also for the past, he spent the rest of his life making up for his delusion, for his hope in the British rule, and fought them with all that he had. This brush with death brought us closer, and Afrin and I confessed everything to Noor, and she heard us with patience and alarm, saying nothing, only listening. Numbness and anger carried us all as they burnt Ratan's Babu mother at the cremation ground in Kalka. Once the riots subsided, we mourned her with all of their relatives who had all arrived in Simla to celebrate the beginning of new life and instead had to return home with death. From what we knew so far, 7 people had died that night, some used in the violence of riots. Why take away the life of this mother who had been nothing but happy for her son, who had come to bless him and his future wife with all she had? Why punish Ratan Babu in this way, a sincere, passionate, loving son who wanted nothing more than to bring justice in this world, to make the lives of others better? Why did the Lord have such a terrible fate for my sister, who was so close to happiness she had always desired, but instead had to wear her white wedding saree to a cremation? It was hard to digest this cruel twist of fate, to settle the sorrow in my heart. I heard the others say that she was only paying for her deeds, that one's karma does not allow a person to go on any other's path except the one chosen for them, that we all must bear the fruits of our past lives and atone for our sins. It hit me that tragedy and loss would continue to haunt us till the day we die, that there would be no respite, no escape from grief. Suddenly, my dreams of going to America, acting of the movies of Hollywood, didn't seem as glamorous anymore. How foolish and innocent I had been to imagine that life could be so easy. We had lost our mother, our father, our home, and were on the course of losing the hotel, our last remaining memory of home and togetherness. The talkies were a world away from our world, luring me in with impossible dreams, shining lights, fashionable costumes, and the promise of fame. But what was right in front of me was real, and perhaps this was the true meaning of life. Perhaps I must face everything, feel every emotion. There should not be any escape. To escape sadness and sorrow, loss and death, trials and tribulations would be to escape life itself. Ratan Babu, struck with grief, followed all the rituals as he was told to almost mechanically. I heard some of his family call a friend a bad omen that had brought this ill luck upon his family, but he shut that down quickly by telling them clearly that he didn't believe in such things. While we were still at the cremation ground, I spotted more members of the Simla circle: Sood, Ajad Bhai, Dr. Banerjee, and finally Guruji, who came and stood next to us. I had never seen Guruji outside before, and I wondered how much the British knew about him, and if he should have stayed hidden. He was wearing his classic white khadi dhoti and kurta, exuding power and magnificence, his eyes looking much farther into the future than mine could ever do. He nodded at us briefly, taking his time to look at Noor before folding his hands in the direction of fire, saying a prayer under his breath. Ratan Babu came and touched his feet in greeting, and Guruji patted him on the back. When Sood came and stood by us, I saw Ratan Babu stiffen and give Sood an accusing look. So, what about the guns now? You went in their pursuit. What will you do with them? My mother is dead. Sood kept a hand on Ratan Babu's shoulder, pulling him closer. They kidnapped that Hindu girl. What could one expect? But don't worry, will have our revenge. Your mother's death will not go unpunished, he murmured. Why didn't they stop the riots? Ratan Babu asked Guruji, pain in his voice. They knew that there was a animosity between the Hindus and Muslims in town. Why didn't they do something? They had all the power, and yet. Guruji held Ratan Babu by the shoulders before taking his face in his hands. He looked Ratan Babu in the eyes and then at three of us, as if about to tell us a secret that only we would be privy to. Let's talk, Guruji said. I met your father almost 15 years ago, Guruji began. Once we had all settled in hotel, he looked at the three of us. At the time, there was nothing common between us except the rage that bubbled within us. The moment they fired in Jallianwala Bagh, I, like your father, knew that my life would amount of nothing if I did not spend in pursuit of justice. But that was our only point of commonality. Your father was a rich businessman with his finger in my dreads. He had power, money, servants that ran around him, eager to do his bidding. Most of all, he had the ears of British, who respected him because he was a rich man. Unlike me, all I had were big dreams and ideas. He handed us a photograph, and I stared at it. Too stunned to look away. It was our father, looking very formal in a western suit and glasses, standing next to Guruji, who looked so much younger. Guruji had all his hair and looked lean, tall, and haggard in a thin kurta. They stood arm in arm. You both had met? Noor asked, holding the photograph, unwilling to let go of it, her eyes transfixed. Not just him, but his whole machinery. Prakash, his young secretary, excellent boy, Ravi, a brilliant strategist. I have to say, you all were too young at the time, and you were a woman. There was no question of your involvement. This picture was taken shortly after your father and I met. We spent the next 4 years planning and fighting for the Vidyut group, a bunch of young men who had come together because they had had enough of Britain tyranny and wanted to take our land back by force. The group never worked out and disbanded within a few months. We fought amongst ourselves too much, but I had learned from it. And the Simla Circle is a version of the steps I took with your father. Eventually, your father left to pursue other goals. He felt that we were not making much progress and he wanted results faster. He started giving money to armed rebellions, funding robberies of British treasuries, and destroying colony symbols. At that time, I believed his actions to be too aggressive. If things went wrong, my poverty would ensure that I would be hanged first. He could shield himself with money, but now I realize that he had been right. Bold steps must be taken if we are to find freedom, and so the viceroy must be killed. Pin drop silence followed Guruji pronouncement, so silent that I could even hear the small ripples the chai made in my cup. The setting sun cast golden hues through the windows in the salon where we sat. Birds chirped outside, happy to see the end of the storm. Apart from the occasional noise of the servants working outside, the salon was quiet. The viceroys must be killed, No repeated. You must be out of your mind. No need to appear so spectacle. It is by no means an original idea. For decades, people like me have been trying their hand at the ultimate kill, to bring down that one man that would overthrow the Raj once and for all. In Calcutta, not a day passed when a British official was not made a target, and they deserve it well and truly. They sent our brothers to jail, give them death penalties under the guise of law, but there was no law, and there still is not. There is a despotism. My nephew, flogged and beaten to Delhi in jail, was caught as an informant or on two occasions. India was just one stroke of luck away from the viceroys being killed. Each time fate intervened and the viceroy of their time was saved. Dacoities in trains, gathering arms was the order of the day. You were not considered a man if you could not fire a gun. Even women too, 16-year-old girls, went up and shot up a British superintendent straight in the face. Did you know that? That year we put up their portraits in town instead of Ma Kali, but these smaller acts had their limitations. What we needed all this time was one quick, cleverly planned coup. The viceroy is the greatest symbol of Raj, and consequently his killing is the greatest emulation that could be inflicted on them. North India lies in the hands of three men: the viceroy, the commander-in-chief, and the governor of Punjab. Once you have the viceroy, the other two will bolt, and the government will be easily toppled. The Germans are willing to help us rise and overthrow them, especially at this time. Their support will pour us as soon as they see our revolts rising, and then Britain's downfall will begin. We will a new country within months, free to take the reins of our destiny in our hands. Guruji went up to Ratan Babu, putting his hands on Ratan Babu's shoulder. This is the right and perhaps only path forward for revenge, atonement, and freedom. You made an oath to us all those years. Will you stand by it? Ratan Babu looked agonized. He folded his hands, bowing his head. Why didn't you tell us before about our father? Afrin asked. It was a long time ago. I looked to your father for guidance, but he did not have the patience for men like me. Our lives had come together once, but as I said, I was an idealistic poor man with no means to realize that passion. Yet I remembered everything he taught me. Now the Simla Circle holds a lot of power, and thanks to Ratan Babu, it brought me connect with you. Life has come a full circle, and we may be able to and where we started. But I don't understand it. How does the Simla Circle work exactly? How many people? Noor's voice seemed to crack from the weight of all the burdens the last days had brought upon us all, the brunt of which fell upon her as the eldest. Hundreds spread across the hills and Punjab. Every 5 to 10 people are divided in a group with its own leader. The work is of two kinds. If you can hold a gun, military work. If you cannot, civil work. When we let someone join, they get a master, and this new member trains for 6 months. What I learned in Calcutta, I implement here. And you did that too, Noor asked Afreen, a hint of accusation in her voice. Afreen nodded. Ajad Bhai was my master. You assume boldly and mistakenly that we want to participate in your activities, Noor said, addressing Guruji. I didn't assume, he replied. I was offered, and I am taking you up on the offer, asking for your help in the killing of the viceroys. Noor looked at Afreen before answering. Offers can be withdrawn only if it's in your power to withdraw. He took a step closer to her. May I call you by your name? Look, Noor, you are like my sister, and you are an intelligent woman. You have done well after your father's death to pick up what was left for of your family and build a life like this one, especially when you don't even have your husband to look after you. But a decision of yours could set in a motion that wheels of history, benefiting generation to come. Very few hold such powers in their hands. That's all very equivalent and tempting, Noor said, obviously moved, but it's too much. How can we expect it to free a nation? But you are not. Just help us free the nation of this one man and the rest will follow. Isn't Europe regretting now that they didn't stop Hitler when they still had a chance? What if one of his soldiers had, at the right moment, put a bullet through him? History would have been different. Look at them now, embroiled in a war, one man and we are free. But why can't you get to him on your own? You think we haven't tried? You are talking about one of the most protected men in the country, so protected that he has hundreds of soldiers at his disposal at every second of every day. He is absolutely inaccessible to us. When So told me that you have an annual summer jubilee ball to end the season and that the viceroy attends, I was amazed. In the atmosphere of merrymaking and dancing, there will be minimum security. The viceroys will be vulnerable. It was our best chance to get him. Give us access to the viceroy at the ball. Let us enter that evening and take him away. It was logical, yet outrageous, unbearably dangerous, yet widely seductive at the same time. Noor placed the room before sitting down and receding into the world of her own. Her face betrayed a struggle. I had spent so much of my life forming opinions based on what Noor thought that I waited to hear what she had to say, even as my mind raced wild with responsibilities of what was being discussed. There another reason, Guruji continued. The British men are not saying it openly, but they will accept the Muslim League demands. In fact, they are feeding it. They will divide more and more of our land between Hindus and Muslims. We will be used against each other so that they can strengthen themselves. Even if the British leave, they will leave us with a huge wound to make sure we are not capable of standing up to them or anybody else ever again. To get our independence on our own terms also means avoiding the division of our land, our people, our very hearts. If what you decide today can prevent the separation of brother from brother, you should not doubt what you ought to do. It's not easy, Noor said. The right path is never easy, but I'm sure we can make this happen. And and how are you so confident about that? Now Guruji paced up and down the salon in excitement. Years ago, the Simla Circle created its army, the Bhagat Fauj. Its men, its scores and hundreds in different parts of the country have trained for the day when the country will fall. Now this army beats its time. Once we can bring the body of the viceroys to the Bhagat Fauj at the borders of Kalka, they will march into town and the revolution will spread in Delhi, Bombay, Lahore. It is our job to form the secret resistance that will topple the government. It is the Bhagat Fauj to defend it. Lines of communication will be destroyed. Telegram and telephone offices will be seized with the vices that the Indians in the service would have to follow our commands. Our people in Delhi will pursue the British administration to decide either the British leave India voluntarily, portraying the viceroy's death as an accident, or we send the news of the British government in India having fallen to the international press and Britain is humiliated in the midst of war. Then they will either try to tighten their hold here and risk being seen as fascist, the very people they are trying to fight, or they will try to reach out to us with a compromise and agree to leave. If they make a wrong move, the Germans will do all they can to milk the situation. And what will prevent India from being divided? There will be no time for the British to pander to the Muslim League, Guruji said. They will have to draw up a quick exit plan, and once they have left, we can renegotiate the Muslim League's demands within the country. We can take the vote of the people, see what they want. Ratan Babu has lost his mother today, Guruji said, walking up to him. They think how many mothers will lose their sons, how many families will be ripped apart if the country is divided between Hindu Muslim. If we are act now, there will be a new government of a free India, a beautiful India where everybody is equal and respected, a government formed by us, its own people, where the land is for everyone, Hindu, Muslims, Parsi. Centuries ago, your ancestors found refuge in this land. What would have happened if this land was not there for you? Think of your father, think of what he did all those years ago. Think of how your home was taken away from you. Noor had a faraway look in her eyes. I know that. In the end, all she thought about us was us. She had taken the curse of her in-laws when she had left them to take care of us. She had given up her life so that we could live ours. But perhaps Guruji's idea was too powerful to ignore. Guruji came and stood in front of her, bending to look eye to eye. This is what history is made of, girl. Made of, girl. It's how revolutions are started, from an idea that turns into a tide that sweeps the land. But one must think beyond oneself, beyond the immediate. Let us lead the vices away and kill him. We will protect you, help you escape, and hide for as long as it takes. Guruji sat down and we continued with our tea, none of us talking. What he had suggested was so bold and preposterous that it was hard to consider it as a possibility. If we gave Guruji the viceroy at the Samaj Jubilee Ball, we would have to run, escape, give our life as we knew it, and hide until the freedom he promised finally arrived. I was sure that Noor wanted this freedom as much as Afreen, and I did. She too wanted to continue our father's work and fulfill his unfinished purpose. So when Afreen nodded, standing next to Ratan Babu, and I, in my innocence, held her hand in affirmation, Noor finally nodded. We knew this day would come, Ratan Babu said. This is what we all set on, the unfortunate path that leads to freedom. I dared not to say a word. I knew that this moment was significant, for it was then that I realized it was time to act, to speak out, to grow up. It was time to leave behind childhood dreams and take my life in my own hands. Guruji smiled. We will plan together. He turned to me. Sudh told me that you are friendly with Mr. Naylor. I nodded uncertainly. He smiled triumphantly. Excellent. He is in the Viceroy's office, isn't he? You must get the information we need through him. If we want to leave, we need to be successful. The more information we have, the more foolproof we will be. My heart turned to stone. I realized that this is what it takes. Later, I asked Noor why she said yes to helping the Shimla Circle. She held my hand and said, because it's the only way we can save the hotel. I don't understand. We have until the end of the season, and then we have to begin the process of handover. They took everything from us, our father, our old life, now even our happiness, but I won't let them take away the hotel. If we are made to leave the hotel at the end of the season, so will they. If the plans work out, and if by helping the Shimla Circle we can really drive the British away, we can come back and reclaim the hotel, our town, and our home. This is the best hope have we have of coming home again, and I am not willing to let go of this chance. We were young and naive and believed we could change the world. We failed to see the truth that was out there for everyone to see, that we could never come back home again, that coming home would elude and haunt us for the rest of our lives. सो गाइस, मिलते हैं आपसे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में। बहुत ही जैसे लग रहा है कि ये मूवी का क्लाइमेक्स चल रहा है, अब क्लाइमेक्स शुरू हो गया है। अब देखते हैं कि नेक्स्ट वीडियो में क्या होगा। आगे का जानने के लिए बने रहे मेरे चैनल पर सुनो कहानी, और अदर बुक्स भी है, उसको भी एक बार आप चांस देके ज़रूर देखें। एंड डोंट फॉरगेट टू लाइक एंड कमेंट योर फेवरेट बुक। थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।